Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Hustle Footy. It's your boy Ray, and tonight I've got Mac with me. Welcome, Mac.
Good evening.
Tonight we're going to be going over the action from some of the midweek Premier League games, as well as we'll tee up some of the upcoming action from this weekend. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @housea_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's get straight into a game that took place day of recording, Mac. A game that very much so I had eyes on. The Merseyside derby, Everton 2, Liverpool 0. And I think this is a result that tells us a lot of things about kind of where the title race is going, but also we can extrapolate even from this early point what this means for the rest of the season for Liverpool. But we of course have to go straight into the action, and I think Mac, we have to give you props again for sort of pointing out that this is going to be an interesting match because it's a derby, and it definitely was. Everton definitely had a game plan that they used to approach this game. Ultimately, got two set piece goals, set up shop, made it difficult for a Liverpool team who are just lacking that final killer instinct for, you can say, up to a couple weeks now, and just had a great time for their own fans, moving them further away from that relegation zone. And honestly, what a fantastic day for Everton fans. Win all across the board. What were your overall takes from this game, Matt?
It felt like it was coming, and that's why going into the game, I thought that Everton had a little bit more of a chance than they historically do in this matchup, having actually lost at Goodison all the way back in the Premier League against Liverpool since 2010. So it's been a long string of either draws or losses for them. But considering just a couple of key factors, Liverpool thus far think this is the 15th game so far this season that they conceded first, which if Everton are able to score first, I think they're sound enough defensively on their day, as well as are still able to kind of pose a threat in set pieces, that they can continue to grow a lead, which is what ended up happening in this game. And like I said, it felt like a long time coming for Liverpool, where that has been a weakness for them defensively, as well as once they do get behind, I feel like they've ridden their luck a little bit too often of coming back and responding, which they do have great character and are able to do it, and they've done it better than any Premier League team this season. But you'd rather not have to kind of expense that energy and kind of get the lead first and control and dictate the game from start to finish, which Liverpool haven't done and didn't do on this day, which is what really cost them the game. Obviously, big picture wise, we can talk about the title race, how this impact. I feel like we have less certainty there because there's still a little bit more wiggle room. I think the more certainty that we do have out of this game is Everton. This for me is, again, I thought going into this game, and even if they didn't pick up as many points as we would have expected them for the rest of the season, should be fine. They are fine. I think there is no situation right now that they are going to be relegated. And that's why their fans are celebrating, to the point where, yes, we're staying up. This is fantastic. But also we may have just not thrown dirt on the coffin of Liverpool's title chance, but at least we've helped set the coffin down to have dirt thrown on it potentially sometime soon. So great result from them. Everything that an Everton fan would have dreamed of happened on this day. And the other side, and to be able to speak more about Liverpool, is where, in terms of a constant theme defensively, conceding first and kind of relying for a comeback, but it didn't happen today. The consistent thing about them as well in the final third has been fluffing key chances. And it wasn't just one player. Diaz hit the post, which made me feel a little bit unfortunate for him. But Nunes had bare chances. Salah had chances as well. This team created 23 shots. So only 7 of them were landed on target. And I would argue Pickford had to make one really good save off of, I think it was towards the end of the game when Everton were already up 2-0, and he had to dive to his left.
Salah save,
that one.
Yeah.
Aside from that, there's not a single one that I'll pick from the litter where Jordan Pickford, this is going on any highlight reel. Everything was right at him, very comfortable, very easy, aside from that one. And even for him, I think he would have felt comfortable doing that, even though I do argue it was a good save. What about you, from a Liverpool fan's perspective, or what are your general thoughts on how this game played out? What were the takeaways for you?
Gotta agree with you in that fact that it's been coming. Liverpool have been shut out a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and this is kind of what we are now as Liverpool fans fearing because we knew we were going to concede goals. Defensively, we haven't been as solid for a number of reasons over the last couple of weeks, and it kind of flashbacks towards last season where it's kind of falling apart defensively, and you can't really find something to go up to really save you on the opposite end, and really, the goals are not coming. So you have to play a great game defensively, and then of course the play style that Liverpool will have is always trying to throw numbers forward, leaving ourselves exposed at the back. So it's kind of kind of a repeat of kind of last year. You have, of course, Alisson, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Andrew Robertson, Salah. Those players will, as the goals are conceded, you can sort of feel it, I guess, from a Liverpool fan for a while now. You can sort of see it in their body language and their play in general. Just that things are rushed and it's not natural anymore. So of course there's a lot of pressure on these players, and it's definitely gotten to them. In terms of the result, it's something that, as a Liverpool fan, you wouldn't want, and credit to Liverpool, to Everton, especially at Everton in a derby. This is the worst nightmare you could have had, losing, especially in a game where you could have continued to push for that title. Losing against your rivals is definitely one that's gonna hurt for now until the end of the season, and perhaps for years to come. On the flip side, of course, I quickly want to give a big shout out to Everton's Branthwaite and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Both Evertonians, I think, brought through the academy as well. So it's going to be feeling a lot better for them to have great games, and of course, putting misery on your rivals. Of course, the thing that really two more things that really sting as Liverpool fans is this is Jurgen Klopp's first loss at Goodison Park in his final Merseyside derby. And of course, can't forget that there is a documentary to come out of this at the end of the season. So of course, Liverpool fans, they would have been excited to watch that if things went a different way. But now I think a lot of Liverpool fans will be turning away from that, or maybe just skipping through some parts for that documentary. So interesting to know. I'm interested to see how the rest of the season plays out, and a couple of things that I maybe just spitballing in terms of who's going to play, how things have shaked out in terms of new manager recruitment that maybe have kind of caused the downplay in form. But ultimately, it's been coming. Like I mentioned earlier, Liverpool had been overperforming earlier in the months of 2024, and now it's kind of catching up, and we kind of see that Liverpool definitely not up to the standard of the Arsenals and the Man Cities to win the league this year. So that's ultimately the overall take. Do you have anything in terms of looking to the end of the season, or perhaps into the new season for this Liverpool side?
With Liverpool, it's interesting because interesting for me is a lot of credit's gone to them, considering how injured their squad has been up to this point, where now I would argue this game, if you were asked Klopp what his ideal starting 11 would be, I think he had everyone playing, right? For me, though, but there's still something wrong. There wasn't something succinct. I think what you kind of highlighted for me, where Trent was doing what he was doing, that was fine. Andy Robertson had an okay game. Defensively, I think they were fine enough. They just gave away too many opportunities to Everton in terms of set pieces, and that's what caused them. But offensively for them, what was missing? The front three, I think, we're probably not going to experience too much changes there. So it's the midfield. And I'm very curious to see, can the midfield trio of a Curtis Jones, McAllister, and Szoboszlai long-term be successful for the rest of the season? Sure, but going forward as well, because I think there is a missing element there where maybe McAllister, I think, has done well playing it more as traditionally as a 6, which he hasn't really done. I think maybe if you were to bring him forward, does that mean Curtis Jones is off and maybe Endo would be starting instead? And then you would notice maybe a little bit more fluidity throughout the team in terms of that ball progression, where I think McAllister is probably better in the final third than a Curtis Jones, even though Curtis Jones probably has a little bit more of a physical profile that Jurgen Klopp is looking for. And even Szoboszlai, where he started the season very, very hot, but it seems like he's kind of tailored off as the season's gone on. It's his first in the Premier League, so hopefully, and he's a young lad, so hopefully he's able to adjust and be better prepared for next season, and hopefully for the remaining games. But I think that midfield for me, even though it seemed like they had something solved, and they were able to kind of carry themselves throughout the injury phase. But now that everyone's back, it doesn't seem as natural in that area of the pitch for me as what we've seen even a couple of months ago, even a couple of weeks ago. So for me, that's what I'm looking at to see, is there further adjustments needed there? And from there, similar to, I guess, maybe selfishly for me, comparison for Arsenal's where like the whole Declan Rice situation, is he a 6? Is he an 8? McAllister, what is his long-term position here? What do we need to do? And how are we going to be able to adjust to figure out where I would argue he's been their best midfielder all season? How can we make sure that we're not playing him out of position and potentially harming what he could do for us going forward? Is it adjustments on both sides of him? Is it adjustment where he moves position and people are shuffled around? That's what I'm more focused on. And hopefully Liverpool are able to at least continue to be very, very competitive for the rest of the season. And I think they will be, because even though I think people may say, it's like, oh, was the title race done? Maybe. But, and Klopp even said himself after the game, is that they do need a moment of embarrassment, really, from Arsenal and Manchester City. So their destiny is even further out of their own hands. But it's still possible. We've seen in this Premier League season where a team's been on a high, other team's been in the bin, and it's all been cyclical. So maybe this is Liverpool's turn. There's still a couple games left to play. Maybe it's too far gone. We won't know until we get there. But at least in the meantime, they need to stay competitive, because the only really choice they have is to win out, to give themselves a shot. And of course, I anticipate them to do that. But I think in these next couple of games, figuring out that midfield so it eases the pressures on the front three as well as on the back four, I think that's probably their key to success for me.
I think you're right there in the sense of figuring out the midfield, but I think even figure out what the remaining matches will look like for Liverpool. Of course, we've seen Klopp drop Salah and Nunez to start. I think it was against Fulham on the weekend. So could he do the same coming up against West Ham? That is something that I'm excited to see if things change. And from just looking at the overall reaction, Klopp during the game, of course, the smile that he has after conceding the second goal from Calvert-Lewin, and of course that point as well, Liverpool very, very poor defensively. I think it was Bosley who was the closest man to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and he doesn't make an attempt. Was it attempt?
It was Trent.
Then even worse, because he wasn't even in the frame when I was watching the highlights. But yeah, so that in itself, I'm interested to see, because as you probably know, there's been a lot of talks on who's going to take over for Liverpool. And I think that in itself, and there's going to be a lot of talk, even just looking at some headlines, there's already some talk about Carragher, talking about was the Klopp announcement, did it have an effect on Liverpool? And of course, initially it did. I think it riled up the players, and they wanted to do as well as they could. But it's burnt out. The players are now unable to live up to that sort of effort and play style that they had before, and a combination of things have caused a dip in form. And I think it's not helped either by sort of speculation up in the air on who's going to be taking over next season. Of course, you can't really stop the media and everyone from talking about it, but I'm sure that deep down, I'm sure the players are very focused. Still, probably brings some of the players, especially with losing the FA Cup, or getting knocked out of the FA Cup and the Europa League. That's something that's in the back of these players' minds. And so I think that in itself has something to do with how poorly they've been. And so I'm interested to see if there's going to be a change in personnel. Can we see maybe some players who have been on the fringes come and feature more towards the end of the season to see, slowly start phasing out some of the older players? And could this be Mohamed Salah's last season for Liverpool? In conjunction with Jurgen Klopp, something to note here. But with regards to West Ham, Mac, I guess I'll toss it to you first to sort of predict what will happen in this game. West Ham, not great. I think last time out they lost heavily. It was the Crystal Palace, I believe.
Yeah.
And they also got knocked out of the Europa League. Will have lost 12 of the last 14 games against Liverpool, so not great in terms of a return there. Two teams who are down on their sort of run of form and looking to get a win badly. What are your predictions from this upcoming game?
I expect Liverpool to win. They have, as you said, 12 of the last 14 games, Liverpool have beat West Ham, and even just 2 games this season. the West Ham are in a very, even I would argue, a worse run of form of Liverpool, having lost, have been winless in the last 4 games across all competitions, with 1 draw and 3 losses. So things have been bad, and that's why you've been seeing a lot of speculation about David Moyes' future. Where is this the right time for him to step away? Not necessarily get fired, but hey, maybe you should think about leaving. Come on, David, we don't want to have to fire you, type of thing. And that's been the conversation where when he did come in with them, they were in the relegation battle, brought them all the way up where they've been not consistently, but they've been a much better football team, competing in Europe, winning a conference league, and doing things that West Ham haven't done in decades. So full credit to them. He deserves his flower, so you don't want to fire him. But for them to reach that next level, or to stay as a team that they want to be, do they need to make a change there? And that's been a lot of the talk. So I think if Liverpool come in, and both games this year have not been close, if Liverpool going to absolutely shellac them, which is what I anticipate to do, because I would expect a response from this Liverpool team. My opinion would be is that at that point, that conversation is done, where David Moyes may come out. It's not just too dissimilar to a Klopp fashion, where David Moyes will come out and say, yeah, this will be my last season, or something of that ilk, or it will be at least be set in stone that is what's going to happen for him at the end of the season, because I feel like he's done his job there, and it's time to move on. And I think this potentially might be the last nail in his coffin. Another heavy defeat to Liverpool puts them even further out of the Europa League competition race, because right now they are 8th, and I think it's 5 points back of Manchester United. So it seems like if they do get a loss here, which is I anticipate, probably too far gone. Overall, though, like I said, I think that's what will end up happening in this game. Very excited to see how it actually plays out, because coming from maybe an Arsenal fan's perspective or a Manchester City fan's perspective, is that if Liverpool don't pull out and come back and respond and do not collect all points in for the rest of the season, I think that would be, just as I said, it'll be final nail in coffin for David Moyes for West Ham. It will be the final nail for Liverpool season as a whole. So, and either way, I feel like the result happens, we're going to see a conclusion one or another for either of these teams. So very excited to see what happens. Do you have any other thoughts on maybe West Ham or Liverpool?
Yeah, I mean, much like you could just copy and paste all the notes from Crystal Palace against Liverpool. How well Everton played, very much like Crystal Palace. There's a game plan here for West Ham. We know David Moyes knows how to set up his team. They will definitely be on the counter, and you just can't count out the quality that you get from Kudus, from Bowen and Paquetá. So, I mean, it's likely going to be similar play. It's going to be a similar game where Liverpool may have a lot of possession, will look to get a lot of chances, but West Ham will try to hit on the break, especially at home. Hopefully they'll have some of the crowd to support them, even though they've been on a poor run of form. At least, end the season well. It's going to be an interesting first 30 minutes, I would say, because either team gets a goal, you're gonna have to favor that team to really to take all 3 points. Because if Liverpool get a goal, fans might turn against West Ham, and it's going to be a long day if they try to go at Liverpool. And then similarly, if West Ham get a goal, we've seen Liverpool go scoreless in 2 of their last 3 Premier League games. Could it happen again? You can definitely extrapolate and say definitely it can. So interesting to see. We'll definitely keep an eye out on that, and then we'll definitely cover that in our next podcast. So let's take a quick break here, Mac. I know we've gone long. Let's go over some other games from this weekend, and also we'll preview some other games in our next part. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now, discussing another game that took place this midweek. Very high-scoring match, this one, but very one-sided in terms of the score. And that's, of course, Arsenal 5, Chelsea 0. Very, very interesting result. One that I think I'm going to pat myself on the back now and say I kind of predicted in terms of Arsenal's dominance. I didn't think it would be this type of scoreline, but, got to give credits to Arsenal. Mac, though, what were your overall takes from this game?
For me, I think it's going to go back to, I don't mean to kind of immediately shit on Nicholas Jackson, but I'm going to. I think it comes back in that, for me, there were 2 key moments of this match that really decided how it was played out. One was the Nicholas Jackson miss. We're going for a header towards the end of the first half. Conor Gallagher crosses the ball into him, goes for a header. He misses it. Instead, he handballs the ball just because it's this lack of confidence, not be able to kind of go in and be able to make the effort and put his full body on the line to be able to kind of finish that opportunity. And it was not his only opportunity, but that would have made it 1-1, and maybe Chelsea would have settled down. I felt a little bit more calm in possession and out of possession going through the rest of the game. Then secondarily, when Arsenal got that second goal from Ben White off a corner kick, which defensively for me from start to finish absolutely made no sense to Chelsea. There's two on the ball for the corner. For Arsenal, only Mudryk comes out to be able to apply pressure, and it was just a domino effect. Rebound, Ben White finishes it, and from then on in, Arsenal were in complete control, and they did not see themselves the way back. So overall, those two key moments for me really decided the match. Arsenal, again, created that snowball later towards the second half, but it didn't look as certain going through the first half and even beginning of the second half until those moments. So overall, very disappointed from how Chelsea played out, because it was there for them. The opportunity was available for them, especially towards the end of that second half where they started to grow in the game, and they even outpossessed Arsenal through the course of the game. So, and created some chances in the final third. They didn't actually create goal scoring opportunities from there, but they had enough possession where they could have been like, okay, we can do a smash and grab with that one goal, keep the ball, feel comfortable, but they just didn't get across that finish line. And that's been a consistent theme if you don't have Cole Palmer. And if Cole Palmer doesn't play, which he did not, it seems like they really didn't have anyone else to be able to create anything for them. It really was, in some ways, like, it's a straw that stirs the drink. That's what people say. It seems like they were missing the straw, the lid, and then the water was just spilling out of the cup completely. It was a complete mess. So very disappointed from that Chelsea side. Other side, to just kind of burn salt or throw salt to the wound is where two of the goals come from Kai Havertz, who now is on 9 goals in the Premier League, 15 total goal contributions across all competitions, has now scored more goals in a single Premier League season for Arsenal than he ever did for Chelsea. And he celebrated both goals like he meant it. So for me, I think this is as down low or down bad a Chelsea's team has been. And now the conversation amongst Chelsea fans is, there is no room for Pochettino to come back next year. And that's been the talk that I've heard online, watching other content creators going on Chelsea Twitter, seeing that reaction. So horrible from them in the result, because they've never lost to Arsenal this bad and this poorly before. I think there's a 30-point difference between the two teams right now, which is the largest gap for these two teams. So overall, like I said, a lot of negatives on Chelsea, a lot of positives for Arsenal there. So seems like job was done on that end. What about you? Any overarching takeaways, thoughts, or individual moments you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, regarding Cole Palmer FC. Oh, sorry. Did I say Cole Palmer FC? I meant Chelsea Football Club, of course, because that's what Pochettino mentioned in his pre-match interview, and he was talking up. Chelsea really have to now. The players have to play for themselves and show this is not just, like I mentioned, Cole Palmer FC, but it's Chelsea Football Club, and it definitely did not show that way. I do have to say, I do agree with a lot of what you said. Definitely, opportunities were there, and if you look at it in isolation, Arsenal score early, yes, and then anything can happen there. You could equalize, and then at halftime, even going into halftime 1-0 down is not the end of the world. But the way that you kind of fall apart in that, I would say 15-20 minutes from going down 1-0 to 5-0, and even having Thiago Silva come on towards the end of the game, this is just not a good look. If I'm Thiago Silva, I'm refusing to come onto the pitch, because this is not what I signed up for. I mean, he's not going to be there at the start of the next season. It very much looks like. And that's maybe for the best for him. With regards to Poch, I mean, I have to give him the benefit of the doubt, just because this team has been missing not just Cole Palmer, but it has been missing a couple of their key starters throughout the season, and has been riddled with injury throughout the whole season. So a lot of inconsistency there. They're really down, I would think, from losing to Man City in the FA Cup, so something to add there. But of course, this doesn't excuse the performance that they brought out, and the scoring, which it looked like they kind of had a uptick in form with regards to scoring, had definitely dried out in this game. Now, gotta flip it over to Arsenal, because I can't say we really learned much from Chelsea. But now I gotta, and Mac, this might be music to your ears. I really have to shout out Arsenal and the fact that they look like the best versions of Liverpool and Man City. And the fact that, of course, right now Arsenal find themselves in first place, best goal difference in the league, 56 goal difference, 82 goals for, 26 goals against. So, of course, the most goals scored and the fewest goals against. And that's what I mean. In such a short period of time, Arsenal are able to score multiple goals in succession, kind of share the goals around, and concede very, very few goals, which Man City have kind of over the last 2 years shifted towards in terms of controlling multiple phases of play and keeping the opposition out. Even though Chelsea didn't put up a great fight, you still have to give credit to Arsenal because they were able to keep that clean sheet regardless of how the opposition play. And again, one of the other things I wanted to point out is different players stepping up for Arsenal. Trossard getting that early goal, I think, really sort of settled the nerves down at the Emirates. I'm going to have to make a comparison to Diogo Jota, who, as a Liverpool fan, we're severely missing at the moment. Trossard has that ability to come in and score important goals in important moments, and he did so on the weekend, I believe, against Wolves. I'm pretty certain, and of course, in this game, very early on. So big shout out to him, and then of course you have Kai Havertz playing well. Odegaard, probably one of the best games he's played for Arsenal. Ben White getting on the score sheet, and all across the pitch, players stepping up. I think Tomiyasu started this game, if I'm not mistaken. So a big positive to have here. Declan Rice could have had a goal himself and looks more comfortable going forward. And so all across the pitch, Thomas Partey as well getting the start here, looking great. So that's going to be a interesting finish to the season. Of course, they're 4 points ahead of Man City with 2 games at hand. So it's going to be tight. So that's the least you can expect for this title race, to make it tight. And Arsenal are definitely playing their part there. Any thoughts about how this affects the title race, Mac?
This was, for me, it was like leg 1 of 2 in some ways, because as we talked about with derbies, where it could be unpredictable, we don't really know what we're going to get, and Liverpool just experienced that. Arsenal back-to-back derbies facing Chelsea, and now we're going to go play away at Tottenham, which they did win last year's fixture. I think it was 2-0 against Spurs at Spurs, but earlier this season actually tied them 2-2 at the Emirates. So it's tough to know, and I think that if Arsenal are able to walk out of that game, they should feel confident in running the rest of their fixtures. Yes, they do have to go play away at Man United, but that's, again, it's not really a derby, and Manchester United have been very porous, where they only just barely be able to beat Sheffield United. So I'm not to, I guess, put myself too far forward and think too far ahead. I think if they do go away and beat Spurs, they should at least see themselves in a position by the end of the season to make it competitive with City, where if City do slip up, Arsenal will be right there to be able to take any whatever's left over from Manchester City. And I think this team's done that. But this was just part 1 of 2. And that the game against Spurs didn't play this midweek, so they have a full week of rest coming out after a huge loss. They'll want to respond at home against their rivals. Arsenal, now this will be their final middle week to like 2 games in 1 week for the rest of the season, I think it is. So they'll only after this Saturday have that 1 game a week, or be in line with everybody else in the Premier League, where they're not going to be playing more games than other. And that's where we've seen where they have got their missteps. Like towards the end of December, when they're playing twice a week, they didn't have the legs to do it. And towards the middle part for the Champions League, playing Bayern, then Aston Villa, like the 2 games a week for them, they don't really have the legs. Because if you look at their matches played, I think like there's 7 key players. If that's Odegaard, Saka, Ben White, Declan Rice, Saliba, Gabriel, they all played 44 to 47 games, and some of them have played every single game this season in either the Premier League or Champions League. So that's a lot of minutes on just a few players. So they don't really have the legs to do so. So I think if they're able to get by this last hurdle against Spurs, not that it's a clear path for them, but they should see, oh, we're in with a shout. We just need 1 small mistake from City, and then they're through. But like I said, part 1 of 2, let's see if they're able to come back and get that response against Spurs, like I said, after tying them earlier this season. And I think that'll be an exciting game, because we know Spurs from the onset are going to come at Arsenal. They're not going to kind of sit back and allow pressure to come to them. They're going to try to take the front. So I think we're going to see a very back and forth game, and I don't think any lead will be really safe in that fixture. So overall, it could be very exciting. Arsenal are the slight favorites, but I think any team could take it away.
Yeah, it feels like an eternity since Spurs last played. So I mean, there's no excuse for them to not to be fresh and ready for this opportunity to, like you said, make it tough for their direct rivals in London. So I'm expecting an aggressive start and an aggressive sort of approach from Spurs. But this game really is a toss-up. At this point, I would have to favor Arsenal in terms of form, but really, I can't tell which way it'll go because like anything could happen, like you said, and it's a derby match. It's testing the resolve from each team. Can Arsenal kind of put the occasion aside and play the team in front of them, and just try to get the win to chase, make it difficult for City, and of course if City drop points, they are there to grab the title. And then for Spurs, it's going to be a tough run for them because they haven't played for a couple. It feels like a couple weeks at least. They face Arsenal this weekend, then they play Chelsea in midweek. Not long after that, they're going to be facing Man City and Liverpool. So for them, they are 2 games behind Aston Villa, and 6 points behind them as well. So they definitely need to get and almost be perfect from now on to the end of the season to have a chance to finish in that top 4, guaranteed Champions League position. So it's gonna be interesting to see if they can use this as a platform moving forward, or if they take a loss here, anything could happen in the next game against Chelsea. Because again, Chelsea, we don't know what we're gonna get from them. It is talking a little bit more into the future, but yeah, I'm just excited because it's a game where there's so much riding on it for both teams that you really, as a neutral, that's kind of what you want to be watching. And hopefully both teams will be at their best and give us a spectacle. But ultimately, I do think Arsenal have the edge based on their consistency the whole season. And I'll be interested to see if they can carry the form that they had against Chelsea into this game. So we'll keep an eye out for that. If there's nothing else from this game on your side, Mac, I guess we'll quick fire through some of the games that took place this week. You already mentioned Manchester United briefly, so let's start off with that. Man U, of course, won 4-2 against Sheffield United. A game where Man U had to come back twice. So I mean, constant theme here, but ultimately they get the win, and I would say Hojlund getting a goal in the end, even though they had the win wrapped up by then. It's a good sign, and kind of even though they did concede against bottom of the league Sheffield, it is still a positive result, and they can build on that. What were your overall takes from this game, though, Mac?
I'm going to go the other way. This actually makes me more concerned from them. It took a penalty, a world of a goal from Bruno Fernandes. So I want to give credit to him because I would argue between you, me, and Gio, the most hard on him individually as a player. On his day, he has world-class potential of what he's able to do, creating for his teammates, creating for himself as a number 10. He could be one of the best in the world. He's one of the most infuriating players to watch. We'll never not say that, but he has the qualities that can separate him and put him amongst the very best. And he showed that today. But that's what it took to beat Sheffield United, which scares me because Sheffield United, as you highlighted, were up twice. I would argue had some very good chances as well. It's not as if Manchester United had a stranglehold in the game or a consistent threat and Sheffield United, on their 2 counters, they scored 2 goals. No, it was not that case again. So consistently, we've seen Manchester United do the same thing. So yes, it could be a platform for them to build some momentum, but it seems like even like the roots of the tree are already rotted to the point where this has just always happened. Yeah, it might sprout something nice, but it's just as likely to kind of topple over in a couple of days. So who knows what we'll get out of this United team? But what this game did show is where you still, even amongst that squad, even with all that. How do I put this nicely? With all the trouble around the team, there are individually high quality players in there. Even the finish from Harry Maguire, I know some Manchester United fans aren't really happy with it. That's a phenomenal header. Just a slight glance to be able to do that. That's class. Again, he's not good at a lot of other things, and maybe that's partly Man United's fault. Maybe that's partly his fault. Maybe the fans' expectations fault. Who knows? But there are quality players on that team, and that's what does drag them out of these situations where they're set up to fail, but they're still so good individually that they still sometimes win, and that's what they did today.
I think one thing to note is Fotheringham, the Sheffield United goalkeeper, had some really good saves. So they definitely denied some of those Man U chances, which they overwhelmingly won out in. 25 shots compared to 10, 13 on target compared to 4 from Sheffield. So I do have to mention that. But of course, Sheffield doing well to create those chances themselves, and even getting up there, the Brereton Diaz goal, very nice play. Very nice play for that goal, and then the first goal was an Onana mistake and giving the ball away. So problems definitely that Man U create for themselves. But something that I found interesting would be kind of like Liverpool in the fact that Man U, of course, the FA Cup final is still to come, but you're not necessarily playing to finish in the top 4. It's to finish as high as possible in the league. We definitely see Garnacho making a step up. It's not a huge leap, I wouldn't say, but you're not now surprised Garnacho starting week in, week out, perhaps even into the next season over a player that might be on his way out in Marcus Rashford. If Gio was here, of course, he would let us know his thoughts about that. I'm interested to see how this plays out and does that have an effect on how Man U approach the FA Cup final against Man City? Of course, we're now seeing Kobe Mainoo playing a lot more. Casemiro has to play in a center back position with injury, but will that kind of have an effect in sort of how they finish out the season? Interesting to know. But of course, Bruno Fernandes, his penalty never looked like he was going to miss, and his shot that went in, he has hit a slight bit of form towards the end of the season, so we'll see how he finishes the remaining parts of the season. Before we wrap up, Mac, 2 other matches took place. Crystal Palace 2, Newcastle 0, Bournemouth 1, Wolves 0. I guess I'll quickly give some thoughts on the Bournemouth 1, Wolves 0 result. Bournemouth, of course, getting the win, but Wolves should have gotten their disallowed goal, I think, should have stood. The call was, I think it was Cunha who had, quote unquote, threw an elbow at Justin Kluivert. Play continued. Justin Kluivert's not necessarily affected by it, and it's a fantastic finish by Chan, who I think that was his first goal in 2024. Fantastic header. Feel unlucky for Wolves that they unfortunately weren't able to tie the game. But Bournemouth, they get the goal, they get the win, and they hopefully can keep that form up to the end of the season. Anything from this game or the Palace Newcastle game, Mac?
Palace Newcastle. Want to be able to talk about that. Bournemouth Wolves, I'll be honest with you, did not care. Not much really way to take away. These two teams are not really playing for anything at the moment, but good on them. Great to see that they played a game. Fantastic. But the Palace Newcastle game, the reason why I think this is interesting, I think the result from Newcastle, I think this is, again, their final nail in the coffin of potentially reaching up for more of a European chance. It was unfortunate for them. I did not like the shape that Eddie Howe played out of his team. He really went to match Crystal Palace with a 3-4-3 and try to be able to go man-to-man across the pitch. The problem was they lost so many individual battles, especially in the midfield, where if you're seeing a Wharton Hughes midfield dominate a Longstaff Bruno Guimaraes midfield, that's a rough day, and that's what happened. Palace were able to get out cleanly on Newcastle. Newcastle could not do that, conversely, on the other side, where Alexander Isak really didn't have any chances. We didn't see much of Anthony Gordon, Harvey Barnes, nothing much of them, where in the final third, they didn't even get the opportunity to create something because Crystal Palace were so dominant on the ball, in possession, and denying those key areas of the pitch. So overall, great to see from Palace, because that's been the separator. Even though they did lose the possession 54-46, if we go back, let's say 4 months, they probably have 30% of the ball, don't really do anything with it, maybe get that one counter-attacking opportunity. We've seen a change under the new management, and it's continuing to evolve. And the player that's really shown out because of that evolution has been Jean-Philippe Mateta, scoring both goals. The first one especially, I think, was a quality build-up play from start to finish. Our boy, Jordan Ayew,
yes, sir,
doing what he does, having no impact on the game, but, still being part of the team for some whatever reason. But you got to give them credit because they scored, again, 2 quality goals, and from what they were able to do. And Mateta kind of seems like Is he growing into it where that link-up play, as I talked about previously on a different podcast, where is he the final piece of a front three when Elise is back to 100% full health, Eze's on full roam, and Mateta's holding the ball up and applying the finishing when needed. So overall, great to see them take the next step where we may see them next year be in a similar position to what Newcastle is right now, potentially chasing for a European spot. And towards the end of the season, that's what we've seen from Crystal Palace. So well done on them. Well, what about you? Do you have any thoughts about that game?
No, honestly, great credit to Crystal Palace, who, like we kind of predicted, would be looking to continue to playing. They're in such a good form that they don't want the games to stop. Unfortunately for them, it's coming towards the end of the season. So hopefully for Glasner, this offseason is going to be very important. So hopefully he can have an effect on this team. And if the form that Crystal Palace have been on is any indication of how they'll play next year, I'm hoping that the owners kind of back him in the off season and help build a team around those front three. But yeah, interested to see how many people choose Crystal Palace as their dark horse team if they're able to keep those front three intact for next season. As of course, we're always looking for those teams that have a couple of players that are going to be stand out, and then just can those players around them provide them enough support. So interesting to see. We'll see how that plays out for the end of the season. But yeah, this concludes our podcast for today. Guys, if you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social media. That's at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Next time you hear from us will be Tuesday, when we'll be reviewing the games taking place this weekend, and we'll also preview next week's Premier League matches as well. But until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Peace out.
See you guys soon.